The shelter fell silent as a weak German shepherd mother wrapped her paws tightly around her puppy, refusing to let go. The vet lifted the syringe, everyone bracing for goodbye, until he froze. His voice thundered through the room. Stop everything. What he had just discovered changed everything forever. A frail German shepherd mother staggered forward, her body weak, her ribs visible beneath her thin coat. Clutched tightly against her chest was a tiny puppy, no more than a few weeks old. The mother's eyes told a story of exhaustion and fear, yet she refused to let go of her baby. Volunteers whispered sadly, "Dogs in this condition rarely survived." Still, she moved with determination, as though her strength existed only to protect her little one. That the shelter staff hurried to help, laying down a blanket as the mother curled around her pup, shielding him from the cold. She trembled, breathing shallow, but every time someone reached for the puppy, she pulled him closer, unwilling to part. The room grew heavy with emotion. Everyone could see the bond between them, but also the mother's failing strength. One volunteer wiped away tears, whispering, "She doesn't have much time left." The atmosphere shifted from hope to heartbreak. No one knew then that this fragile moment, this quiet arrival, would soon turn into one of the most unforgettable rescues the shelter had ever witnessed. The mother German shepherd was carefully lifted onto the exam table, her puppy whining softly, as if sensing the fear in the room. The veterinarian, Dr. Harris, placed a stethoscope against her chest, his face growing grim. Her heartbeat was weak, irregular. Her gums were pale, her breathing shallow. He checked her temperature, examined her frail frame, and then slowly removed his gloves. The silence spoke louder than words. The staff already knew what he was about to say, but hearing it still broke their hearts. "She's suffering," Dr. Harris said quietly. "I don't think she can recover." The volunteers exchanged tearful glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief. "But what about the puppy?" one whispered, her voice cracking. Dr. Harris lowered his gaze, his tone heavy. "We can care for him, raise him strong. But for the mother, prolonging this will only make her suffer more." The puppy let out a sharp cry, nestling against her chest, and the sight was unbearable. Some volunteers covered their mouths, unable to watch. The mother licked her pup's head gently, her eyes full of love. The decision was set, and the room filled with sorrow. Her time, it seemed, was coming to an end. The room grew unbearably quiet as a soft blanket was placed on the table. The mother German shepherd was laid gently upon it, her puppy nestled at her side. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but she summoned every ounce of strength to wrap her paw around him, pulling him close. The puppy whimpered and pressed into her chest, as if knowing that something was terribly wrong. The volunteers wiped away tears, their hearts breaking at the sight of a mother giving what seemed like her final embrace. Everyone in the room could feel the weight of the moment, the end of a life, the breaking of an unshakable bond. The mother lowered her head, nuzzling her pup's tiny face, breathing in his scent one last time. Her eyes glistened with a quiet plea, as though asking for mercy not for herself, but for him. To those watching, it felt less like goodbye and more like a desperate message. "Please protect my baby." No one expected what would happen next. Just as Dr. Harris raised the syringe, ready to administer the injection, a sudden movement caught his attention. The mother, who had seemed too weak to even lift her head, stirred unexpectedly. Her eyes fluttered open wider, and she let out a faint but determined whine. Her paw tightened around her puppy, pressing him even closer, as though fighting against the finality of the moment. The room froze. Every volunteer leaned forward, unsure if they were witnessing a last burst of strength or something more. Dr. Harris hesitated, his hand trembling midair. He pressed the stethoscope against her chest again, expecting silence, but instead his brow furrowed in surprise. There was a change, a faint but noticeable rhythm in her heart that hadn't been there before. The sound wasn't fading. It was struggling, fighting, growing stronger. His eyes widened, and the calm professionalism slipped from his face. "Wait," he muttered, his voice sharp enough to break the heavy silence. Then, louder, his voice cracked through the room. "Everybody stop!" Gasps echoed as the syringe was lowered. Something extraordinary was happening. All eyes turned to Dr. Harris as he pressed the stethoscope firmly against the mother's chest, listening with growing disbelief. "This isn't the end," he whispered, shaking his head. She's not dying, she's fighting. The volunteers exchanged shocked glances, unsure if they had heard him correctly. He quickly examined her gums again, then checked her breathing, his movements swift and precise. What he found left him stunned. Her condition wasn't caused by organ failure as he had feared. It was dehydration and a severe infection, both serious but treatable. His voice rose with urgency. Get me fluids, antibiotics, now. The room erupted into action. Volunteers scrambled to fetch supplies, their tears now mixed with sudden hope. The syringe meant to end her life was pushed aside as 4 lines were prepared. The mother lay still, but her eyes were brighter, flickering with a stubborn will to live. The puppy whimpered, pressing into her neck, as if he too understood that something had shifted. Dr. Harris looked around the room, his voice firm yet emotional. She doesn't need goodbye, she needs a chance. In that moment, heartbreak transformed into determination. The fight to save her life had just begun. A volunteer held the mother steady while Dr. Harris inserted the 4-line, clear fluids dripping steadily into her frail body. Another gently wiped her face with a damp cloth, whispering words of encouragement. The puppy whimpered constantly, refusing to leave her side, his tiny body pressed against her for warmth. The shelter was filled with the hum of machines and the hurried voices of people who only minutes earlier had thought they were saying goodbye. Now, hope flickered in every pair of eyes. The fight for her life was far from over. Antibiotics were administered, her temperature monitored, her weak heartbeat watched closely on a small monitor. The team worked tirelessly, each second bringing a mix of fear and determination. At one point, her breathing slowed, and everyone froze, until she exhaled a long, steady breath that sent relief flooding through the room. She's holding on, Dr. Harris said firmly, his eyes never leaving her. The puppy licked her chin softly, as if urging her to stay. And slowly, the impossible began to feel possible. Against all odds, the mother's strength was returning. By the 3rd day, the change was undeniable. The mother German Shepherd, once limp and unresponsive, now lifted her head when the volunteers entered. Her eyes, once clouded with exhaustion, shone faintly with life. When her puppy tumbled against her side, she let out a soft, familiar whine and nudged him closer. For the first time since her arrival, her tail wagged weakly, brushing the blanket beneath her. The room filled with cheers, some volunteers openly weeping at the sight. Dr. Harris knelt beside her, a smile breaking across his tired face. She made it, he said softly, stroking her head. The puppy yipped happily, climbing onto his mother's chest, and she licked his tiny face with renewed energy. The bond between them, once thought to be their final goodbye, had transformed into a living miracle. Everyone present knew they were witnessing something extraordinary, proof that even at the brink of death, love had the power to pull life back. Weeks later, the once fragile mother trotted proudly through the shelter yard, her puppy bouncing at her heels. Their recovery was nothing short of miraculous. A loving family, touched by their story, came forward to adopt them together, ensuring they would never be separated again. Their tale spread far beyond the shelter walls. What began as a moment of heartbreak had turned into a story of hope and second chances. The mother's final hug was never a goodbye. It was a plea for life that was finally answered. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more powerful rescues.